Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ann Kimoto, and my journey is a rather long one, just like everyone else here. But first, I would like to thank RSDSA, my support group, the members here in Middle Tennessee, all of you that have participated, all of the speakers, my moderators, Sean Catron and his wife Lori, Larry and Ramona Vondres, and I never can say his last name correctly, so I'm sorry, and Melissa Proudfoot Spesden. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I was a game warden for the state of Alabama. I worked in law enforcement in some type of capacity for over 16 years. I was a person that helped others. When there was an emergency or a crisis, I was the person that responded. On June 8th, 2008, I was at work. I actually was going to be off that day, but received a call to go and seize a deer from a gentleman and give him a ticket that had a baby deer in his possession. Can't tell you how many times I did that or how many miles I've walked in the woods on uneven structures. And seize the deer, wrote the gentleman a ticket, a warning ticket, because I'm not as terrible as most game wardens, if anybody here hunts. And I was walking back to the truck carrying about a 20-pound fawn, and I stepped on an uneven spot and fell, catching myself behind me with my right arm. I thought I was okay. I knew something popped, immediate pain, but I just thought it was a sprain, went about my business. Next day, pain was worse, shoulder, neck. Because I was workman's comp, unfortunately, it took a year for me to get an MRI of my shoulder. I did, however, have surgery on my wrist and was in a full arm cast for about 12 weeks. I sustained some radial nerve damage from the full arm cast. My pain just kept getting worse and worse. I thought I was going crazy. And I know each of you are in the same position. You never can think that you could actually hurt that bad, especially when you thought things were healed. I met my husband shortly before I had my initial surgery that caused my CRPS. I would not be here today if it were not for the support that I have from my husband. Caregivers, if you have one, please make sure that you tell them and thank them and share your love. We unfortunately have terrible days, and many times that we become extremely depressed and down on ourselves. But without our caregivers, we wouldn't be here. So how have I sustained and how have I moved forward? I was mad at the world. You know, I became depressed. All I could do was focus on the pain that I was sustaining. And unfortunately, the physicians that I was seeing in Alabama did not want to correctly treat me or diagnose me. I had shoulder surgery in July of 2009. It actually went, I thought, pretty well. I had regained some of the movement and thought I was going to go back to work for dove season on September 8th. August 14th, 2009, in physical therapy, we were pushing myself to try to get the range of motion back. My labrum tore immediately. Intense pain. Next morning, I was in the hospital, pain medication shots, nothing seemed to help. Days and days of physical therapy, no one knew what was going on. And the same thing with all of you, color changes, sweating. And my physical therapist said, Omega, I think you have RSD. I was happy to hear that I had something, but I had no idea what it was. I went to my car and I called the case management worker that was handling my case, and I said, Stephen, hey, I think I just got a proper diagnosis. Well, what is it, Omega? They said RSD. His words were, oh my, that is rather disturbing. I'll call you Monday. Monday morning, I was contracted out to a case management company, and my care went from decent to garbage. No one wanted to say that I had CRPS. I was so angry. Anger took over my world. I became depressed. I no longer was not the person that helped others. I was the person that needed almost full-time help. My condition manifested. I found out that I had Arnold-Chiari malformation. It's where your tonsils of your brain are herniated down the small hole in your skull. And I was having horrific migraines all the time. Fortunately, my husband he's in the military, he's in the Army, and we are stationed at Fort Campbell. Fortunately, I was able to get off of the workman's comp insurance, and TRICARE picked up. I don't believe I would be here today without TRICARE. Military does take good care of their family members and their armed service workers. I started seeing different physicians. I had a great pain management doctor in Clarksville. However, Dr. Johnson implanted my first spinal cord stimulator. It helped me. It helped some of where I could actually touch my body and feel a little bit different. But unfortunately, I had to have brain surgery in December of 2012. I also sustained a fall shortly after I'd had my implant of the stimulator and my leads migrated. So it no longer worked anymore. I had Arnold-Chiari malformation surgery December 18th, 2012. I thought I hurt before. That is not something easy to get over. I spent weeks in the hospital, and then I had several months of home health. I, like many of you, became so depressed. I didn't leave the house. I was afraid of talking to people or going out into public. I have always been a happy person, and I've always had a good outlook on life. I didn't care anymore. The only thing I cared about was my husband. During the time that I had surgery, unfortunately, my husband was going through a training period, and it was very difficult for both of us. His job takes him away a lot more than usually that he is at home. So I had to find a way of how I was going to live again. And I had a physician say to me, "Omega, it's okay to grieve. You've got to grieve your old self." And unfortunately, a traumatic experience like this, or getting a chronic diagnosis, is like a person dying, or you're dead, and you're walking into your house every day, and you're looking at a coffin, and you're there in the coffin, but that's the old you. You have got to bury that coffin, and you have got to move forward. I didn't know how to take that. I thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And how am I going to move forward? Being a police officer and law enforcement officer, as long as I was, psychological care and psychiatric care is taboo. You say the word psychologist, the only reason why you go to a psychologist is for your initial evaluation to go to the police academy and start work. Suicide with law enforcement officers is extremely high, so is heart attacks and stroke. I refused psychological care. Fortunately, I had to do a psychological evaluation and got in with a wonderful psychologist that treats military families. And 2 days a week I would see him. And at first I thought, there is no way that I'm going to be able to do all of these cognitive behavioral therapy things that he is telling me to do. And how am I going to move forward? And he told me, Omega, you have got to find a purpose in life. You had such an amazing purpose before. You did so many things for people. You have got to find a new purpose, whether it's a support group, volunteering, art, a new hobby. But you and only you can decide what is going to be the best thing for you. I was like, I can't even get out of the house, much less how am I going to volunteer? How am I going to do anything? And so I said, well, on doctor's orders, I'll start a Facebook support group in the Tennessee area because I could not find one anywhere. I started support for survivors of RSD and CRPS in Middle Tennessee. 5 members joined shortly after 2012, and now we have approximately 155 people. And we don't discriminate. You can join if you do not live in Tennessee, but most of the information we have is Tennessee-based. Started having monthly support group meetings whenever the weather was decent. Most of the time we have 5 to 6 people, but there's been times that we've had events at the Fontenelle and other places that we have had 25 to 30 people. And you all know it all depends on the day, how you're feeling and what you can do. But we don't pressure people, and we make sure that I wanted our group to be low or no drama. I have my members that tell me, oh, Omega, you have helped me do so many things, but honestly, they have helped me. I found a purpose in life again. I advocate for, you have to love yourself. And so many of us fall out of that. We feel like a burden. We feel ugly because most of us have gained weight. I gained probably 70 pounds. And and as all of you know, it is hard to just get back into life with pain. I became extremely anxious going out in public because I was afraid someone was going to touch me. In fact, my husband and I went to a church one day, and I had actually spoke to the pastor before going and said, hey, I have this pain condition, and I'm afraid to come because usually at church everyone shakes your hand. And he promised me that it would not happen. But unfortunately, everyone was trying to hug me and my husband. And how in the world do you go, don't touch me, in church? So unfortunately, I've been back to church maybe once or twice since, but it's a difficult struggle. And then pushing yourself to do things that you used to do, but no longer can do because of your pain. So finding a new hobby, finding an adaptive way to do things or a different way to do things, and think outside the box. I had a friend years ago before I developed CRPS. In fact, it's my best friend, Josh Holt. I was going through a troubled time, and Josh said to me, Omega, you have to learn to live your life, not endure your life. And that never really hit home to me until I got sick. And how many people in here are just enduring life and not living their life? Probably everybody in here that has CRPS can raise their hand to that. Find a way that you can find enjoyment in life again. Yes, you're going to hurt. There's going to be problems. It's going to be a struggle. But you'll feel better. My emotional health, whenever I started the support group and started meeting with people, became so much better. And I didn't realize it. It took years. And finally, about a year ago, when I saw the psychologist again for a meeting and was telling him that I was helping RSDSA and trying to get a conference in our area, he said, Omega, you found your purpose. My husband has loved me and been there for me through thick and thin. Often it is more, I personally believe that it is more difficult for our caregivers than sometimes the pain that we suffer. There's so many times that my husband has said to me, Omega, if I could take your pain, I would, and I'm so sorry. Or what can I do to help you? Well, there's nothing that anybody can do to help you. So most of the caregivers, especially parents, you want to protect your child or you want to protect your spouse. Say thank you, and don't always have a negative outlook on life to them. They're struggling too, and sometimes we don't see it. It's a pretty difficult road for them. And without my husband and without his support, I would not be here today. Without friends who also share my condition and the friends that stayed with me along the path, because how many of us have lost our friends? When I worked, 6 months after my diagnosis, I was looking through my telephone and I had over 600 contacts. And I could count on 2 hands how many people within 6 months had called to check on me or asked me if they could help me. Know who your friends are and know who you can trust. Not everyone is trustworthy. But when you find a good friend, you stick with them, and you try to live your life. I was fortunate enough a few months ago to be selected by my husband's unit to go to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and the military has actually realized that traumatic events cause health problems, numerous health problems. In fact, trauma that your parents experienced can actually be passed down to children. You've got to find a method of releasing your trauma. Some way, somehow. Many techniques that were taught there were tapping. There was an EFT thing, an emotional, I'm sorry, I don't even remember the name of it, I'm not going to try to, but where you actually force your body to start shaking. And did you realize that when you see an animal in the wild, that often when they're stressed, they shake? Or zebras, when you watch them on National Geographic, they shake. And they do that to shake off their stress and their trauma. I learned many different techniques that help me move forward. Things that you think that are crazy and that'll never work, try them. What is it going to hurt? You got to try anything and everything to have quality of life. And if I've taken anything from my experience, I brought from it that I appreciate now being hurt and developing CRPS. I never in a million years thought I would ever say that I was okay with being sick. But working in law enforcement as long as I did, I never took time to focus on me, and I never took time to focus on my family. I worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The one thing with my illness and my injuries and the 25 different surgeries that I've had is that you have to appreciate family, you have to appreciate yourself, and you have to move forward. So I'd like to leave you today with, every morning when you get up in the morning, look in the mirror, and no matter how bad you feel, tell yourself that you love yourself. Tell yourself that you're beautiful, and tell yourself that I may be struggling with pain, I don't like it, but I'm going to accept it, and I'm going to find a way to move forward. Thank you all for coming. If you would like to join our support group, there's a table out front. We're Facebook based, and we would love to have each and every one of you. Thank you.